Hi, I'm James Schillinglaw for Insider Travel Report, and I'm here with Captain Martin Grazer, who's the captain of National Geographic Resolution, the newest Lindblad expedition ship, and we're on the very end of a cruise, an incredible cruise to Antarctica. But we wanted to take some time to talk about this new vessel because it's only a few months old, really, and I guess he's the guy to talk to about that. So you're going to find out about all that and more on Insider Travel Report. Now, Captain, first of all, again, it's been a wonderful cruise. Had a lot of fun. The accommodations are excellent. The ship is beautiful. But let's talk numbers on this ship. First of all, how many passengers can it have? How many guests?
126 guests.
126 guests. When did you take delivery on this ship?
On the 30th of September this last year.
And you've been at it from the beginning, although I knew you took a little break in between, but then you came down, and this is your first season in Antarctica, right?
Absolutely. First season with this ship, not my first season in Antarctica, no.
How long have you been with Lindblad?
I started with Lindblad as a chief officer back in 2003. And then I was away for 9 years, captaining another ship, and then I came back to Lindblad in 2015.
So now here you are, captain of this. They must have entrusted you with one of their two top new ships, right?
Yeah, I think so. I was also the one who was the first one on site during the new build of Endurance, the sister ship of this one.
Now, what is different about this ship? We've heard, I'll start off with the one we all hear about, the X-Bow. What is the X-Bow?
So the X-Bow is let's say, a brand new bow form. And if you think about a traditional bow that, so to say, pushes water to the sides, it unfortunately leads to slamming. And the X-bow can be more compared to like a dolphin nose. And so it dips into the water in a different way, avoids slamming pretty much altogether. So the real beauty is that you have less speed loss when you're going into head-on seas, and you also have a much more comfortable ride.
Well, that's the big thing. Everybody talks about the infamous Drake Passage, although we had a very good passage coming over, very little. I hear it's going to be a little bit more rounding waves coming back, but it was an incredible, comfortable ride, and that's sort of what the X-Bow does, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, on the way down, there was so little sea that the X-bow wasn't really the reason for it, because we had almost flat calm seas. But we will have head-on seas later this afternoon and this evening, and then you will see the difference. And the big difference is like for example, just an example, our cabins are very far forward. We are living, so to say, in the bow area. On a traditional ship, you could not live in the bow area. It would slam so hard. So all you put in there is rope stores, paint stores, whatever you want on a traditional ship. Definitely no cabins, and I have one of the most forward cabins here on the ship, and I've been sleeping very well all throughout the Antarctic season. There is no slamming. I mean, the ship still pitches. That is, every ship has to go over the waves and will pitch a little bit when you have big seas, but it will. The X-bow does avoid the slamming.
Now, the other thing about this is that this is a what polar class is it?
It's Polar Class 5. So it was. At the time when Endurance was launched and built, it was the highest ice-strengthened ship in the world.
The Resolution, it's twin the same one.
Yeah, the Resolution as well. So this is so-called a Polar Class A ship. That means the ships can operate year-round in polar waters. And there's only less than a handful of expedition cruise ships that are Polar Class A.
Well, I have to tell you, I'm very impressed because we went immediately, as soon as we got to Antarctica, we went through the Lamar Passage right through, and you're going past icebergs and everything else, and it went right through. And then later on, we went into sort of the real ice across the Antarctic Circle, and you went straight in there.
Yeah, that was a very interesting day because with any other ship, you would have probably not tempted that. What was that there was a lot of icebergs, growlers, bergy bits, and also 1-year-old sea ice packed up against the fast ice edge, and it was packed up for miles. So of course we can penetrate that ice. You have to avoid the hard ice, the growlers, the bergy bits, the icebergs, and pass through the 1-year-old sea ice. It was very narrow passages at some time. At times, but we actually, of course, you can reach the ice edge. What happens afterwards is like that stuff packs up again behind.
And behind, I was saying, how are we getting out of here? Now, of course, we had you actually presided over a wedding on the ice, which was, I guess that was a first for you. I don't know if you've done other weddings.
I've done. This was my third one.
Oh, okay. So it's not we're thinking, oh my God, this is great. But then we were there for a while, and then I looked towards the stern of the ship, and you had all the ice behind you, right?
Exactly, and that is was the crux of the problem. So if you would go in with a normal shaft line ship, you would have a hard time, or it would be impossible to turn in that ice. But here our Azipods come in, so we have basically podded drives. They're electric engines that you can turn 360 degrees. You can basically call it 2 outboard engines that you can turn 360 degrees at the back of the ship. And that allowed us to flush the ice away. So when we parked in the ice, I tried not to push the ship too far into the fast ice so that the stern would still stick out into the mix of ice behind us, so that we, before going out, we could, so to say, flush and flush and flush with these.
I saw that, it's like, the engines were going and everything else, and you got it. But then I remember waking up late late at night, and I looked outside, and you guys were all on the bridge, and there was this kind of major berg right next to us, and I was like, oh wow, that is amazing that you can get by that.
Yeah, we can definitely do things with this ship that you weren't able to do, and it's a mix, of course, of the ice class. That gives you the strength of the hull, but also the power of our engines. Like just as a comparison, the National Geographic Orion, that was my last ship, had 2,800 horsepower. Here we have close to 10,000 horsepower. That's a very big difference. And we have basically as much power in the bow thrusters as the Orion had in her main engine. So the ship is very powerful. That power allows you to flush the ice. And of course, the last thing here in that mix is having Azipods, because by being able to direct the pod wash in any direction, you can actually create a pocket of open water, and then you can turn the ship around in the ice and face outwards and then push through the ice again. And if you're, of course, trying to back out, that won't work, because your stern will pile. There will be ice piling up at your stern, because our stern is relatively flat, so you will not make it very far with a stern movement. So you basically have to turn the ship around 180 degrees, and if you don't have the pods, we wouldn't have been able to do it. So when I calculated that before going in, I said, okay, that ice is soft enough that we can actually flush, and that we can actually turn the ship around and get out of here. And that's the tricky part. Whenever you go into ice, you always have to have an exit strategy.
I would think so. Otherwise, you're going to be marooned here like Shackleton or something. You don't want to be that, right?
Well, we had also the wind that was changing that night. So eventually, in the next day, they forecasted very strong southerly winds that would have blown the ice out. So eventually, a day later, we would have been naturally released, so to say. So it wasn't that so much of a risk. But we, of course, want to stick to a schedule, want to go. And of course, we have to try out the capabilities of the ship. It was the first time I actually made her turn around 180 degrees in that dense ice. And I was actually surprised. It took us not more than about 30 minutes, and we had the ship turn around.
I know, and it was great. And so we can make our time. In fact, you've made all our expedition leader, Sean, is telling us how grateful he is that you could get him to the places that they wanted to go. I think the reason why we didn't get into some islands was maybe there was a lot of seals on the island, and they didn't want to mess with the seals, and so we went to another landing. But you got us everywhere that they wanted to go.
Yeah, and there is another factor to these new ships, of course. It's not only comfort, that it's silent, that it's quiet, but it's also the speed. I mean, we do considerably more speed. We can do up to 70 knots. Of course, for economical reasons, we're usually going about 16 and a half maximum, which is still very fast compared to the older ships. So the older ships were doing like 13, 14, maybe 15 in very calm conditions, but they also lost a lot of speed in the Drake Passage. So this ship plows through the Drake Passage with an average of 15 and a half, 16 knots. knots. And that makes you gain a lot of time. So our landing that we do now, we have never been able to do with any other ship. So we can add pretty much a half a day on the way north, and we add at least half a day, if not a full day, on the way south. It's
really?
like, yes, absolutely. That's like normally in the old days, you had 2 days in the Drake Passage. And if you arrived in the afternoon of the second day, here in the South Shetlands, you were lucky. So now on this trip, we headed straight much further south to the Le Maire Channel, and we were actually there in the morning of the first day, the second day out.
Which is a spectacular way to arrive in Antarctica. As our first year was a most amazing day. We did that. We went out in the Zodiacs, and we did icebergs, and we even had penguins by the end of the day.
So you can actually you add a lot of time just because the ship is fast.
Now, talk about what's the power source. You said you have Azipod motors, but what kind of motors do you have for this ship?
The ship is diesel electric. That means it's driven by electric motors, but the power is created by diesel generators. So we have 4 diesel generators. They are GE, General Electric, American brand. They have one particularity. They're extremely clean running because they have exhaust gas recycling, which is also a relatively new thing in at least on cruise ships. I haven't heard that anybody has those engines yet. There is basically, you can see it already when you look up into the funnel. There's never any smoke coming out there.
No, it is very clean, and it's very smooth, the whole thing. And then you have a wonderful operation with your Zodiacs. I've never seen where you can unload them on those sides and get them out. You can board on both port and starboard sides. You can board in the stern. There's so many ways to get on the Zodiacs, and then you have, of course, have your sea kayaks too. So you're pretty well outfitted, right?
Yeah, very well outfitted. Like expedition-wise, I think that's the most versatile operation possible. So if you think about it, we have, as you already said, we have 2 side gates, so we can always protect at least one. But also with a pod, we can turn the stern of the ship into the wind, create a pod wash to both sides, which calm the sea. So that works actually up to 35 knot winds. We have relatively calm conditions at the side gates. We can also, if we have lots of ice moving, or we have very strong winds, we can put the bow into the wind, and then we have a calm stern platform. So we can operate on stern platforms on the sides. There's also something very particular about these side gates. They're so-called flooding side gates. So they're very low, and we don't care that if a wave ever comes in there, it drains straight out. So they're called flooding side gates. And that is so much smarter than having, like many ships have platforms sticking out on the side. You permanently have to worry about ice drifting into these platforms, damaging your platform. Here, there is no platform. It's just the hull side that's flush, and if there's ice coming down, well, you just wait until it's passed, and then you pull up to the side gate again. So this is incredible. And another feature, as you mentioned as well, was the boat garage. The boat garage has many advantages, but the main advantage is speed. Everything goes so much faster because the Zodiacs are right above the waterline. You don't have to drop them from the top deck, and that takes time. And also then you have to get the driver in. Drivers have to sometimes ride up, which is dangerous. Here, you drop them basically from 2 meters height. That it goes very quick. So we can deploy in a bit over 10 minutes, 10 Zodiacs, which is speeding up the operation. And of course, that is in the benefit for our guests.
Yeah, certainly, and whenever Sean, our expedition leader, says we got boats in the water, I know I'll probably take me longer to put on my boots than it takes for them to get the boat in the water.
Absolutely, that's the whole thing is about speed. But then the garage has other advantages, like major advantages. So you have the boats in the dry. So when it's snowing outside or it's raining, they're never wet. So you get dry boats in the water coming out from the garage. You can work on those boats inside the garage. If you have a rip or you have to do a repair, well, you can repair the boats inside a warm garage. They're away from UV influence, so they will last much longer. So the boat garage is a huge deal.
No, and I really and then of course the technology here. We're actually here on the bridge. You can't see it over there. I mean, it looks like a Star Trek type bridge here. I've seen bridges, and they are most like, but you really have a high tech control center here.
Absolutely. I mean, the bridge also, we have been heavily involved in designing it, But also the shipyard has brought in a lot of experience here because they were making some of the most high-end offshore vessels in the industry, and that's actually the setup we have is a typical offshore bridge, but we have adapted it to work very well for our operation as a cruise ship operation. One of the biggest advantages is that our screens that we have in front of us are not mounted on consoles. They're mounted directly against the wall above and below the windows, so you can actually step right up to the window and look down, and you basically from the chair where you're steering the ship from, you can basically just get up and look straight down, and so you can there's very little dead zone in front of the ship that you can see, so it's very good when you're driving in ice to be precise to have such a great view from the bridge.
Now we're down in Antarctic, and the season ends April, is it?
In March, mid-March.
March it ends, and then of course you're going to make your way up to the Arctic, right?
Up to the Arctic, and then we're gonna do trips up in the Arctic, and then gonna do Svalbard, Iceland, Greenland, and the Northwest Passage as well, and Far East Russia.
Are those any different challenges than down here?
Oh, they can be different. Ice is ice in the end, but here. The most part of the Antarctic Peninsula, as you have seen, is ice-free. There's a lot of open water. Then you have, of course, once you go south of the Circle or you go into the Weddell Sea, which we now extensively do, so that we are not, going to the same place that everybody goes to. We go to exceptional places. We try to push south of the Circle almost every trip or into the Weddell Sea. We have reached further south in the Weddell Sea than most other operators have ever been. The previous trip we have been actually further south than Lindblad has ever been in the Weddell Sea. And in these areas you have a lot of ice. You have to deal with a lot of ice. But the north can also be very treacherous. When you think about Svalbard in the very early season has a lot of ice. Sometimes it is multi-year-old ice. East Greenland, you have the East Greenland current bringing down lots of the North Polar ice. That can be very tricky. And also we have the Northwest Passage at a relatively early time in the year to do, and the stakes there are we are not playing with ice. Here down here we can basically say there's too much ice, we're not doing it, right? When you have a Northwest Passage,
you have to get through.
You have to get through because there's cruises that you have to do on the other side, right? They're already sold there. You have to do them. So there it's a must to get through the ice. So those cruises can be very challenging.
It sounds like this ship is pretty well equipped to handle that, though.
Oh, it's very well equipped to handle it. But when you're facing multi-year-old pack ice, even icebreakers can have trouble. So of course the ship is as a passenger ship very strong. It is actually technically an icebreaker, but you need a lot of pushing power to get through some of that hard ice, and you have to do it slowly. You lose time, and then it's a critical cruise because we have to make it through to be on the other side. So you want a lot of power, of course, and you want a powerful ship to actually propose a Northwest Passage as a one-way trip.
Now, we go out to about 100,000 travel advisors in the United States who are booking your ship. What do you want to leave them with about this ship that they should tell their clients, in terms of the running of the ship, in terms of the comfort, in terms of this revolutionary new design? I mean, what can they tell them? Like, you're going to be good, you're going to be fine, right?
Yeah, it is an incredible ship. I would say if you compare it to all the new builds of our competitors, and it's not like nice to talk bad about competitors. It's nothing I want to do really, but I can say those ships are far advanced. It's just a new generation, and the difference is that this ship combines basically a lot of great things. You combine the X-bow with comfort of extremely comfortable stabilizers, even zero speed stabilizers. You have a super modern bridge that's very well set up. You have PC5 ice class. You have ATSI pods. This ship is actually built with a silence class and a comfort class. That's another thing. And when they did the measurements for silent and comfort class, they said we were exceeding yacht standards. So the ship is very, very comfortable. It's very capable. And then we have what what we talked about, all these opportunities with expedition operation. And I think this is the first polar ship, new build, that Lindblad has ever built. And as an operator, we do have tremendous experience in the industry. And so this was basically the first time we could put all the experience into building a new built ship, because so far we have operated ships that were basically refits. So we have bought an old ship or an older ship that has been in operation before, built by somebody else, and refitted it. And this time we could do it exactly as we wanted. And I can just say we pretty much nailed it. And I think that reflects in what we have been able to do this season. We have had unbelievably good voyages. We haven't missed a single one, and I think I also have to talk about the comfort on board and having 2 restaurants and having the events up in Tupaya. I think this also from a gastronomic point of view.
The food is very good.
From a hotel point of view, it's a whole notch up from the ships we used to have, and I think guests will necessarily be happy on one of our expeditions.
Well, Captain, I want to thank you for taking all this time to tell me about this wonderful vessel. It's a brand new vessel. It will get your clients to Antarctica or the Arctic in comfort and style and speed. Good luck for the rest of the season here in Antarctica and then also up in the Arctic.
Yeah, and hope to see you again. And
I would love to be up here, yeah.
And welcome a lot of new guests to our product and our company.
Absolutely. I'm James Schellinglaw, and this is Insider Travel Report.